Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Vitriol, Suffer and Become, out January 26 on Century Media Records. The album has 10 tracks, 48 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are an American death metal band. As far as the design is concerned, this album offers a design that's a clear result of the sound that it has. Dense, balanced, cohesive. That's how this album comes across. It doesn't really deviate from the beaten path and offers you this incredible consistency of brutality and heaviness from the first song all the way to the last. The only exception to that rule, at least temporarily, is track number 5, Survival's Careening Inertia, an instrumental track that starts off really bright, really open, really clean. There's no other song that has that sort of experience. Now that experience doesn't last the entire track, but it gives you at least enough time within the song and within the record, because of where it is right in the middle, for the listener to catch its breath before the onslaught continues. I feel like it's a really important track from that standpoint. It plays a very important role. It allows you to slightly reset where you are and prepare you for the rest of what lies ahead. I think for an album that has this sort of brutality and aggression and even density, being 40 minutes in length would have increased the overall playability. 48, you start to really push the listener to its limits in terms of how much you can digest in one single sitting. As far as the sound is concerned, I really have to go back to the word density, because this is a dense record, but it's not a dense record that blurs the lines between all of the different elements, either that be the guitars, drums, bass, or even vocals. This album is dense because it has a lot. There's a lot of layers, there's a lot of texture, there's a lot of different sound elements and even atmospheric elements playing a role in everything that's put in front of you. That's where the density comes from. It comes from volume, it comes from quantity, not for lack of quality in terms of being able to digest all the different moving pieces. For the density that this album has, you're still really able, and you're afforded the opportunity to really see how much the guitars move and how much work they're giving the overall experience, with a thick, heavy sound that balances and grounds the tracks, and then underneath that thick, heavy sound, you have a little bit more movement with some technical elements that give a different perspective of what this band can do, and offer a different perspective in what brutality could be all about. It's not just about being heavy, it's not just about being thick, it's not just about having a lot of volume. It's doing something with it. And I felt like this album, at least from a guitar standpoint, really offered that dynamic. It really created dualities that increased the depth of the sound and increased the depth of the songs, but it also offered a lot more for the listener to digest. Not just a thick, chugging riff that stays consistent from start to end, but rather infusing all of these technical elements behind it that creates a big current underneath the turbulent waters that stay at the surface. And then when you look at the consistency of heaviness that this album has from beginning to end, you don't have to look any further than the guitars pairing up well with the drums, but the drums creating the offset ramp, and then the vocals as well being super consistent in that delivery. But when you look at the drum sound, it's a drum sound that feels powerful, that feels heavy, consistent, and really impacting the brutality of the album on a track-by-track basis. You always feel like the drums are not overshadowing or overpowering the sound and what the songs are giving, but you could always tell how powerful they are and how heavy they are and how brutal they become. When you listen to this album, you can be mesmerized by the guitar work, because the guitar work on this record really pushes this band forward and upwards from what they did on their debut record. But when you're listening to the drum sound, you're even wondering if there's actually anybody playing the drums, because it's so heavy, it's so brutal, at times it's so fast that it feels almost like it's humanly impossible to play the drums at this rate, with this kind of RPM. So it's a really great job from that standpoint to create an impactful element that stays balanced but offers great quality and great texture and great sound to every single song on this album. The vocals is one of those elements that I felt perhaps that becomes the more consistent one of them all, because when you think of it, the vocals are there to enhance the brutality, to enhance the heaviness of the album. The drums do that, but the drums are are not there consistently only doing that one thing. The drums have a little bit more life, not as much life as the guitars. The guitars are the more lively element within the entire record. So when you look at them, when you look at the guitars at the top in terms of the versatility, then you look drums second because not as versatile but still offering some movements. And then you look at the vocal performance, and that one stays very grounded and very consistent across each and every single song. There are some changes here or there. There are some slight ebbs and flows, some slight movements within the range, going sometimes with a little bit more of a screaming vocals, not as deep, not as guttural, but those are so minuscule. They're just raindrops during a monsoon. It's kind of hard to really attach yourself to those small pieces when the overall experience of the album hits you much harder on the other spectrum. So that is an important element that balances out the record and offers a little bit of consistency when sometimes the chaos within the guitar sound and the overall compositions of the songs doesn't. Now, as far as the quality of the overall record, I think, like I said, the album could have been more playable, and I don't mean softer, but it could have had more playability, more engaging in terms of finishing the album and going back again to the beginning if it was a little bit shorter. You need to understand that the level of brutality, the level of aggression on this record is not for a rookie. This album is really designed for the brutal death metal hardcore fan that enjoys that sort of sound, that enjoys that sort of experience, regardless if it's 40, 48, or 55 minutes. But if you're thinking a little bit more broader, if you're thinking a little bit more about those ones that sit in the periphery, this album becomes a little bit cumbersome because of its length, not just because of what it gives. And that is something to keep in mind. As far as the quality of the record and composition of the songs, this is definitely a step up. I mean, it's everything they did on their debut album, but now turned to 11. As far as favorite songs goes, I want to start off with Nursing from the Mother Wound. Brutal from the start. A very thick, dense sound right at the top, and then you have this ability to allowing the guitars, I mentioned this earlier, to really cut through at the bottom and create movement, sound a lot more technical, sounding that they have a lot more life to give, and that allows you to have these two main layers, one at the top that is just brutal and heavy, and the other one underneath it that kind of moves you along, that injects some energy into the way the track is coming. The vocals feel very consistent. It's a song that has a sense of darkness to it, and that comes from the orchestral haze that kind of permeates throughout this entire track. You have to really dig deep in the layers and into the texture of the song, push away some of the density, push away some of the brutality, but it's there. This is an album that overall actually had a lot of atmospheric elements, which surprised me, and all of them offer this sense of darkness. It offer almost like a blackened experience to the record itself and to the individual songs. But this is a track that goes very brutal, and it starts to feel at times like that brutality also moves into an atmospheric realm, which gives you a little bit more of a sense of thinning out that density that the track has from start to finish. Next we have The Isolating Lie of Learning Another. This song starts with one of my favorite riffs on the entire album, if not the favorite riff. This is one of those heavy caveman riffs that it just chugs. It has a great chugging to it, and then I like the fact that it starts like that, then it morphs into the more brutal sound with that more technical element underneath that brutality. Then it comes back again to the chugging. It returns to its origins, and then after that it starts to morph, it starts to grow, and it becomes a little bit more consistent with that design of having a brutal experience at the top and then a more technical experience underneath it. And this allows the song to go in 1,000 different directions. It moves a lot, it creates a lot of movement. It loses track of that pattern that it created in the first third, and then no pattern really emerges afterwards. It's just a song that becomes a lot more forward movement thinking instead of just staying still within that pattern that was originally created. I like the way the song moves because it eventually finds its way into a great solo section, one of my favorites as well on the entire record. It adds a huge amount of light and brightness to the song. It's a different way of infusing a moment of clarity and an album that at times lacks a little bit of that clarity because of the overall density that it has. So without changing the DNA of the song, without impacting the DNA of the album, you're able to infuse an element within the track that merges well with the flow of the song, that fits well with the flow of the song, but it gives you that moment to breathe, it gives you that moment of clarity. Really nice solo section that added incredible quality to the song and obviously to the record. Last but definitely not least, I Am Every Enemy. Wow, this is a pounding track. I mean, thick, heavy, dense, brutal, aggressive. The vocals give a lot of life to this song, and they add a lot of aggression and a lot of intensity to how the track comes across. It's definitely one of the most brutal songs on the record. It still has this veil of darkness because they still find this way of infusing some really thin, and when I mean veil, I really mean veil, really thin atmospheric pieces that brings this somber aura to the tracks, and that is represented consistently throughout the entire album. This song is no different, but it's just that the brutality of the track almost makes you forget that because you're so concentrated on how heavy and brutal this song is. If I was going to describe this album to somebody, this would be the first song that I would tell them to check out, because I just feel like it represents better the overall big picture that the record is giving you, which is one of aggression, brutality, dense experience, but still very textured and layered with that atmospheric veil that becomes a little bit of the dark backbone of the entire album. This is at Vitriol with Suffer and Become, out January 26 on Century Media. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video.